Nabila Ramdani is a French journalist who specialises in Anglo-French issues and Islamic affairs, and she joins us now from Paris. Nabila Ramdani, welcome to Lateline.
Thank you.
Many are signalling this presidential election as the end of the wave of far-right nationalistic populism across the West. But Marine Le Pen still managed to snare 35% of the vote. It's not insignificant.
Well, I think what Marine Le Pen has been doing is she has been riding an artificial populist wave all along, and what she's managed to achieve throughout her campaigning is to rally core supporters of the National Front, which effectively range between 15 and 30% traditionally. In the final round, she was able to muster a little bit more support, but not more than her traditional basis, if you like. And it's entirely due to the fact that the main traditional parties have effectively collapsed and have crumbled. I mean, the party of de Gaulle put forward an indicted criminal suspect in François Fillon, while the socialist left just exploded. So her rise, if you like, or her getting through to the second round and facing Macron in the final round was entirely due to that.
In fact, the socialist left from the party from which François Hollande came from actually put their weight behind Emmanuel Macron.
Well, absolutely. A lot of socialists were attracted by Emmanuel Macron, although he doesn't want to burden himself with that label. He made it abundantly clear that he was a pragmatist who didn't believe in ideology. He's first and foremost a technocrat, and he would want his administration to be defined by the implementation of policies to deal with very pressing issues ranging from mass unemployment to global terrorism. And it has to be said that he in the most convincing circumstances possible. This is somebody who came from absolute obscurity to winning one of the most powerful executive positions on earth, and this is presenting himself as an alternative to the political crisis at the heart of his country's democracy. And there is no doubt that he will have a daunting task ahead, governing the country and uniting the country. And as your correspondent was saying, his first task will be to form a working majority in the National Assembly.
He has promised to unite a divided France, but here is a president who talked about Marine Le Pen leading a party of hatred that wanted a civil war in France. Now, as we mentioned, a significant sum of voters actually were attracted to Marine Le Pen. So the challenge of uniting the country seems quite immense.
Well, indeed, but it has to be said that Emmanuel Macron was quite right to call Marine Le Pen's party a bigoted one. Let's not forget the reality of what the National Front is. It's a party that's still steeped, in racism, in anti-Semitism, and indeed fascism. So the party attracts that kind of people, but also it attracts disillusioned voters, it attracts protest vote, and people who are prepared to ignore the reality of what the National Front is, to challenge the European Union, for example, to challenge immigration. It doesn't mean that the label of the party has gone away. It remains a nasty party. It remains a party that represents a dark side of French society. So the question is, how do you deal with far-right members of society? How do you deal with prejudice and hate? And even though Emmanuel Macron sounded quite conciliatory last night in his victory speech, he will have a very difficult time indeed to work with this kind of people who are not prepared to collaborate with different types of people themselves. So it's going to be pretty challenging for him to bring the nation together in a climate that is quite divided at the moment.
It's significant, isn't it, that the first meeting scheduled for Emmanuel Macron on the international stage is with Germany's Angela Merkel. They must, across the European Union, be kind of breathing a collective sigh of relief.
Well, absolutely. I think he would want to stress his cooperation and his partnership with Germany, which is a powerful ally in the European Union and indeed one of the founding members of the EU project. I was able to speak to Emmanuel Macron, in fact, on Friday, on the last day of his electioneering, and he made it abundantly clear to me that he was a passionate pro-EU politician, and he spoke very movingly about growing up in Amiens, in the Somme area, in the battlefields, and visiting graveyards where a lot of soldiers, including a lot of British soldiers, died during the Second World War, during the war, and he and that shaped his vision of France and indeed its relation to the European Union. And he made it abundantly clear that he is going to make it very difficult for Theresa May to have its way. He doesn't want Britain to retain all the privileges that the EU has to offer while it is exiting at the same time.
Across this election campaign, we really saw not only Emmanuel Macron but also his wife. And now France has a very high-profile First Lady as well. What does the country make of her?
Well, she's a very approachable woman. I was able to have a little chat with her as well at on the last day of the campaign. She's very fond of, what her husband stands for, evidently, and it seems that she will be playing a very important role as a First Lady, and that the presidency will define a proper function for her, as it were. She has always been defined by her husband as a pivotal person in his life and indeed in his politics, as a rock, in fact, as he would call her. And we are likely to see a redefinition of the role of the First Lady in French politics.
In what way?
Well, in the sense that she won't just be there to, remember in France, it is not a clearly defined position, it's highly symbolic. And it seems that Emmanuel Macron would like to formalise the role of the First Lady, perhaps involving her playing a more political role, a more formal role on his side. He made it clear that she was going to be extremely visible at all times, and that will be a change from, the usual First Lady who is mainly there to accompany, let's be honest about it, the President. So a lot of changes ahead.
Nabila Ramdani, we're out of time. Thank you.